Every civilization had its own definition of strength. The Vikings believed strength meant fearlessness, the Romans believed it meant discipline, the samurai believed it meant honor, but the Spartans believed every unnecessary word made a man weaker. How could speaking possibly reduce strength? It sounds like philosophy, but the more scientists study the human mind, the more this ancient belief starts making sense. Because today we live in a world where silence has almost disappeared. The moment a person wakes up, music, notifications, podcasts, videos, conversations and opinions, minds are almost never silent. And here's the frightening part. Most people are no longer uncomfortable with noise. They're uncomfortable with silence. The Spartans considered that as a dangerous weakness. Why? Because they believed the first battle a man loses is inside his own mind. The psychological power of Spartan silence. If you truly understand why one of history's greatest warrior civilizations deliberately spoke less, you may never look at conversations or your own thoughts the same way again. For the Spartans, speech was treated like a weapon. A Spartan child wasn't trained only to fight. He was trained to control his emotions, his reactions, and even his words. Because the Spartans believed the mouth reveals the mind before the sword ever does. An impatient man cannot hide his impatience for long. The less control a man had over his speech, the less control he usually had over himself. That's why Spartans admired what later became known as laconic speech, short, precise, and purposeful, because they believed clarity is the highest form of intelligence. History gives us a remarkable example. Before invading Sparta, King Philip II of Macedon sent a threatening message. He declared, "If I enter Laconia, I will destroy Sparta. I will burn your cities. I will enslave your people." The Spartans replied with a single word. If. That single word carried more confidence than an entire page of threats, because truly confident people rarely feel the need to convince others that they are confident. But here's something even more fascinating. The Spartans probably didn't understand the neuroscience behind their habit. Yet today, modern psychology suggests they may have discovered something profound about the human brain. To understand why, we first need to answer a question. Why does talking feel so rewarding even when it achieves nothing? Your brain was never designed for today's world. Imagine this. You decide, I'm going to stay completely silent for the next 1 hour. No phone, no music, no conversation, just silence. At first nothing happens, but within a few minutes your mind begins producing noise. Random memories, future worries, imaginary conversations and old arguments, things you should have said years ago. Have you ever wondered why your brain does that? Because the greatest source of noise is the voice inside your own head. And here's the irony. Most people believe they're thinking. In reality, they're simply reacting to whatever thought appears next. The Spartans understood, a man who cannot control his own mind will never control his own life. Today, neuroscience gives us an interesting clue. Our brains are constantly generating internal narratives, planning, remembering, predicting, replaying. This ability is one of humanity's greatest strengths, but left unchecked, it also becomes one of our greatest distractions. Think about how often you've been reading a page only to realize you don't remember a single sentence. Your body was present, your mind was somewhere else. If your own attention can leave without your permission, who is really in control? The Spartans knew before you can command an army, you must first command your attention, because attention is where every decision begins. First your attention goes there, then your life follows. But today's world has discovered something. If someone can capture your attention, they don't just gain a customer, they gain influence over your thoughts, your emotions, and eventually your behavior. Suddenly the Spartan obsession with guarding attention doesn't seem ancient anymore. It seems more relevant than ever. If attention is our greatest strength, why do we give it away so easily? The hidden reward of talking. Here's something fascinating. Why do people announce their business ideas, their gym plans, and their New Year's resolutions before they've actually done anything? Because talking feels productive. Your brain doesn't always distinguish between making progress and talking about progress. Imagine two people. The first quietly spends 6 months building a company. The second spends 6 months telling everyone he's building a company. From the outside, they sound similar. Inside the brain, they're completely different. Every time people admire your plan, encourage your dream, or praise your ambition, your brain receives a small reward. It feels as if you've already moved closer to your goal, but nothing has actually changed. The work is still waiting. This is why several psychologists have suggested that publicly announcing goals can sometimes reduce the motivation to pursue them. The explanation is that early social recognition may create a premature feeling of accomplishment, making the brain feel partially rewarded before the real effort has begun. The Spartans had no neuroscience, no MRI machines, no psychology journals, yet they instinctively avoided this trap. They didn't believe your words should become your identity. Your actions should. Think about it. The louder someone constantly says, "I'm disciplined," "I'm successful," "I'm different," the more they're trying to convince someone, sometimes themselves. Real confidence behaves differently. It doesn't rush to introduce itself. It simply appears through consistent action. That's why truly accomplished people often surprise us. We say, "I had no idea he was working on this." Exactly. Because while others were talking, they were building. But unnecessary speech steals something even more valuable than motivation. It steals observation. And that may be the greatest reason the Spartans chose silence. The price we pay for speaking too much. Imagine you're having a conversation, someone is explaining something important, but before they've even finished, your mind has already started preparing its reply. You're no longer listening, you're simply waiting for your turn to speak. And almost everyone does this. We believe conversation is about speaking. In reality, conversation begins with observation. The Spartans understood this long before psychology. A soldier who reacts before observing doesn't survive for long. Because reality doesn't reward quick opinions, it rewards accurate perception. In every profession where mistakes are expensive, observation always comes before action. Then why do we reverse this in our everyday lives? We speak first, judge first, react first, and only later realize we misunderstood the situation. The Spartans believed every unnecessary word carried a hidden cost, because while your mouth is speaking, your mind stops receiving. You cannot fully observe while you're busy expressing yourself. That is why truly wise people often ask simple questions and then remain silent, not because they have nothing to say, because they're collecting information. They're allowing reality to reveal itself. How many opportunities were lost because the loudest voice in the room couldn't hear anyone else? Sometimes the greatest advantage in life is simply noticing what everyone else missed. But here's where silence becomes truly powerful. It doesn't only change how you see other people, it changes how you see yourself. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. Have you noticed that the moment your room becomes completely quiet, your mind suddenly becomes louder? That isn't an accident, it's a mirror, and most people don't like what they see. Why most people are afraid of silence. Why do so many people reach for their phone the very moment they have nothing to do? Standing in a queue, phone. Waiting for a friend, phone. 5 minutes before sleeping, phone. The moment life becomes silent, we rush to create noise. Why? Most people would say because they're bored. But boredom isn't the real problem. Boredom is simply the doorway. The real problem is what waits on the other side. Because the moment external noise disappears, something else becomes impossible to ignore. Your own mind. The worries you've been postponing, the decisions you've been avoiding, the guilt you've buried, the fear you've covered with constant activity. Silence has a strange quality. It doesn't create these things. It reveals them. Imagine a lake on a windy day. The surface is restless. You can't see what's beneath. But when the wind stops, the water becomes still. Suddenly, everything hidden below becomes visible. The human mind works the same way. Constant stimulation keeps the surface disturbed. Silence allows you to see what has been there all along. This is why almost every great wisdom tradition treated silence as a way of meeting reality. In the forests of ancient India, sages practiced mauna, intentional silence, because they discovered a mind that is constantly reacting cannot clearly observe itself. The Buddha often remained silent, even when asked profound questions, not because he lacked answers, but because some truths cannot be understood through words alone. Words can describe the taste of honey, they can never let you taste it. In the same way, silence is not something you understand, it's something you experience. And perhaps this is what the Spartans and the sages unknowingly shared. Both understood that mastery begins when a person can remain alone without needing to escape himself. But today, escaping ourselves has become easier than ever. An endless stream of entertainment fits inside our pocket, and without realizing it, many of us have become uncomfortable with the very place where wisdom begins, our own mind. But silence alone doesn't make someone wise. A person can remain silent and still be full of ego, still be full of anger and ignorance. So, what separates empty silence from powerful silence? What true silence really means? It's easy to misunderstand the Spartans. One might think they simply believed talk less. But that wasn't the lesson. Silence isn't measured by how little you speak. It's measured by how much control you have over the need to speak. There is a difference. A shy person may remain silent because he's afraid. A wise person may remain silent because there's nothing that needs to be said. Outwardly, they look the same. Inwardly, they're worlds apart. The Spartans never admired silence by itself. They admired self-mastery. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all, because you've realized some battles become meaningless the moment your ego enters them. This is why the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." He wasn't giving communication advice, he was giving a lesson in self-control. The same idea appears again and again across civilizations. The Spartans, the Stoics, the sages of India, different cultures, different languages, yet they all arrived at the same conclusion. The man who controls his own mind becomes difficult for the world to control, because once you've mastered your attention, your emotions and your words, very little remains that can manipulate you. And that's why silence feels so powerful, because silence changes the person who enters it. So, the question was never, how do I speak less? The real question has always been, what inside me feels the need to keep speaking? The moment you begin asking that question, your journey has already begun. Consider subscribing for more wisdom.